This is the Modern Architect radio show and podcast. The Modern Architect features one-on-one interviews with renowned and cutting-edge architects, influencers, and sustainability leaders. Our show informs and illuminates the transformation that architecture brings to our cities, communities, and lives. And now, introducing the host of The Modern Architect, Tom Dioro.
Today, we're honored, and I'm really excited to be joined by Gaylaird Christopher, Fellow of the American Institute of Architects and founding principal at Architecture for Education. You can find them on the web at architecture4e.com. That's architecture, the number 4, letter E.com. Today's episode is made possible by Swatchbox, the leading sample platform for architects and designers. Swatchbox brings thousands of product samples from the world's leading manufacturers into one platform. Browse materials for inspiration, create custom collections, then request your samples for free with automatic next day or second day shipping. Get started at swatchbox.com. Hello again, Gaylaird. We're really happy and thrilled to have you on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, sure, Tom. I'm happy to be with you.
Hey, Gaylaird, as we talked about just before we got on the show, is if you have a favorite quote or one of the favorite quotes, we'd love to hear it to kind of get a feel for not just your great accomplishments, but you know who you are and why it matters.
Sure. Well, I would say my mantra through my 45-year career now has been inspire learning, and that may be sort of a strange mantra for an architect, but I really gravitated early in my career to designing educational facilities, and through exposure to a number of people, but I really settled upon the idea that the architecture that we create, the environments that we create, can inspire learning and also encourage students to be more engaged in the learning process.
I like to engage in the learning process and share with you and your personal experiences. I believe that wholeheartedly, but if you can share your experiences in how it does engage the student to be even more involved in the learning process with great architecture.
The first project that I really remember that being a critical element, and this was actually back in the early 80s. We were designing a school out in Rancho Cucamonga, and at that time there really wasn't any funding available to construct new buildings. So we actually took a series of portable classrooms from another school and then really applied architecture to those. We created some gable structures and screened the wall-mounted air conditioning, and then through the planning committee process, we found out the site that we were locating the new school on happened to be Bear Gulch. It was a place, there was a little creek at the end of southeast end of the site where bears used to hang out, years ago in Cucamonga. And so the school was named Bear Gulch Elementary School. And we ended up putting sandblasting a series of bear paws into the sidewalks, and someone on the committee knew someone at Disney, and we got them to donate a bear climbing up the pole. We were able to build a few new buildings, an administration building, and there was a sonotube concrete column and it's still there today, with a bear climbing up the pole. And so, and that really created a real environment where, really the school is probably the first formal environment that kids have a long experience in. Obviously they go to the store and they go to the library, but schools, they're there for 6 hours a day. And so having something as they come into this, which is typically an institutional structure, having something that sort of breaks down that barrier of the institution, and makes it a more friendly place. We found that to be really engaging to students. And then, little things as they're exploring the campus, they go to their room and the door numbers are on a bear paw, sandblasted in wood, and they can follow the paws around, and almost like a little like Santa Claus in a way, that you have this sort of a little bit of a fantasy that engages you more in your school.
That sounds like a fun school to go to for sure. I like you stated apply architecture to an existing building. We'll jump a little bit out of education and just to buildings in general. Do you see a lot of buildings that you go, oh my gosh, I can imagine what I could do with this, just for the sake of fun?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a bane of an architect's existence. As you go on vacation or you travel around the country or the world, and you see, there's a yin and yang. You see wonderful environments. You go to Europe and you're just inspired and intrigued, and then you go to many communities in America where architects are not engaged in whether it's designing houses or retail structures, and there's not a lot of care or attention to the experience that people have in the building, and so I think any architect sort of thinks about how things could be if a little more thought and inspiration was put into the design.
In your experience, and if you're at liberty to share, why do you think that there is a greater level of inspiration and intrigue with the buildings of Europe versus in contrast to those here in the States? Is it a cost factor? Is it a design factor? Is it a speed factor? Those are just a couple of things I throw out. Why do you think that these structures aren't so much so that, oh, you've got to see this building that or this place that I grew up in, and it's just amazing? It's not common here.
Yeah, I think initially it's just the period that they're built in. Buildings built, 200, 300, 400,000 years ago, they had to be so contextual. And so they fit into the environment very well. And then also, often they're built on the scale of a horse or a carriage or a very small car. So the scale is so much better, from that standpoint. And then, as I've traveled to some communities that are much newer, and they're built, built within the last 20, 30 years, where the community has this appreciation of architecture. For example, the first time I've done a lot of work in Illinois and spent a lot of time in Chicago, and I was so amazed the first time I visited that the cab driver was pointing out, great buildings in the city that he was proud of. And, I can tell you in LA that does not happen, so, I think a big part of that is the community having respect and care for the environment. Finland is another good example. Just going through that country, their schools are rated the best schools in the world. And you can tell that there's a sense in the community, you see parks that are very kid-centric and there's some fun and color and things. So I think a big part of that is whether or not the community is ready to support the architecture with money and also going to places, whether it's a restaurant or a shopping center or buying a condominium or a house in a neighborhood where there's care and attention to the environment.
We'll touch on that the community has a lot of care and pride. How much of a factor is that in a structure's architectural sensibility?
Well, I think in my work, which is primarily educational buildings, I think that, for example, the work that we did in Aurora, Illinois, we had an incredible relationship with the superintendent and the community, working there for almost 15 years. And during that time, we were able to build 4 new schools and then renovate every school in the district. And I just got a sense that, one of the board members, he was a 5th generation school board member, which was incredible to me. That often members of the community get on a school board because they want to become a city council member, or they want to be in the House of Representatives or whatever. It's just a stepping stone to some other endeavor. But in that community, and in many communities, people get involved in the school board because they want to improve their community. They want to improve education for students, and that in turn leads to more support for the environment, more support for the learning environments that are created. And I think there's even a sense to the heritage of the school. And for example, one of the schools that we renovated was Abraham Lincoln School, that was built in 1912, and this wonderful facility. And we went back and we found some artifacts, a flag that was made for President Lincoln, different. Like there was a stop sign from a crossing guard that had worked at the school for 40 years. It was sort of battered and beat up, and it had this incredible texture to it. And so we were able to celebrate some of those artifacts for the community. But that wouldn't have happened if the community hadn't supported that sense of heritage and design sensitivity, in the planning process for the school.
Excellent. This is fascinating. It's also the Modern Architect Podcast. We're talking today with Gaylaird Christopher, Fellow of the American Institute of Architects and founding principal at Architecture for Education. Find them on the web at architecture4e.com. That's architecture, the number 4, e.com. Gaylaird, if you share with us, what was the inspiration for Architecture for Education?
Well, and as you probably know, it's one of the founding principles of Wolfgang Christopher, which is now WLC Architects, and love my partners, and we built a practice. We grew from 4 people when I joined to over 100 people when I left, and we did. We primarily did school architecture or educational architecture and civic buildings, fire stations, police stations, and things of that nature. And I had a good friend, Bill Brubaker at Perkins and Will, and I won't go into the details, but through a number of events, I decided to leave WLC and open an office for Perkins and Will in Pasadena, their first California office at the time. And the reason I did that is just as you know, the heritage that Perkins and Will had. Going back to the Crow Island School, which is probably my favorite school in the world, and knowing Bill Brubaker, and so that allowed me to once Bill had retired and actually passed away, I led their education practice at Perkins and Will, and I found that at Perkins and Will there were, just a big corporation. There's things that get in the way of you really, following your passions, going back to that inspire learning metaphor, it got more and more difficult to inspire learning while dealing with, some of the politics and bureaucracy that you have to. And so the real impetus in establishing Architecture for Education, and actually Rachel and Olivia and me, after I've retired, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary on December the 6th, which is a lot of fun. But in establishing Architects for Education, it was solely focused on that, inspiring learning. And so there was no, when you set up that goal, there's really nothing to get in the way of that from a politics standpoint in the organization. Yes, there's, the economy going up and down and all the challenges that we, meeting budget and all the challenges that we have as architects in taking an idea and getting it funded and built. And so we felt that was the only way that we could keep all of the extraneous issues out of the element that might keep us from achieving our goals.
Oh, terrific. What's it like on a day-to-day? I mean, that's a general question. Just working with the kids and sharing with them architecture. What if you can describe it, however you want to? But I'd love to hear, how you feel about it. Not just the structure of the organization, but hey, when you get to it, here's what you're showing these kids.
Yeah, that actually one of the more fun things that we established and actually we did this at WLC and also at Perkins and Will, but it was really a focus at A4E, is engaging students in the planning process of the schools, and one of the sort of metaphors that we would use with the students was having them sit down and think about their perfect day in school, and doing that through writing, coming up with ideas that they and talking about their day, but also doing sketches of their perfect school, and it's just amazing some of the ideas that the students came up with that really drove the design process as we move forward. And then I think the other thing, I always remember when I was working on my first architectural project in college, was that we had to do a two-dimensional design, just expressing what we thought architecture was. And at that point, I thought, well, architects design houses, as I'm working with students, A4E is very involved with ACE, the architects, contractors, and engineers that work with students after school to really encourage students that may not think of architecture or construction or engineering as a profession to get engaged in one of those professions. And I often think about myself, what I thought architecture was, and then what I really now understand architecture is, and trying to work with them and help them sort of understand, what an incredible profession it is, because it's just this blend of art and science and economics, and it intertwines so many things that there's really never a dull day in architecture from that from that standpoint. It's not like being a race car driver or a fighter pilot. It obviously doesn't have that level of excitement, but it certainly has a variety of things that I don't think you experience in many other professions.
Certainly not. You're listening to the Modern Architect podcast, KZSU Stanford 90.1 FM. We're talking today with Gaylaird Christopher, Fellow of the American Institute of Architects and founding principal at Architecture for Education. For more information, feel free to visit architecture4e.com, architecture number 4, letter E.com. Our public service announcements today are for two organizations. One is Save the Children. Save the Children believes every child deserves a future. In the United States and around the world, they work every day to give children a healthy start in life, the opportunity to learn and protection from harm. When crisis strikes and children are most vulnerable, they're always among the first to respond and the last to leave, and do whatever it takes for children every day and in times of crisis to transform their lives and the future they share. You can reach them or see them on the web at savethechildren.org. And our other organization is Boys Republic. And with that, I'm going to turn that over to you, Gaylaird, and share, please, why the Boys Republic matters much to you.
Actually, one of the last projects I worked on, I'm still engaged with A4E, but one of the last projects I worked on before I retired was the Culinary Institute at Boys Republic. And anyway, Boys Republic has been around for almost 100 years, and it's basically was founded as a place for orphans. Initially, it was just for boys, and boys that had no place to go. They came out and lived in Chino on a working farm, and has some incredible buildings there that were designed. Anyway, it does have some really incredible buildings, but the focus of the facility is to engage students and help them find a purpose in their life. And as I mentioned to you before, probably their most famous student was Steve McQueen. And Steve went on to actually be an incredible benefactor for the school because he felt like much of his success was due to his experience at Boys Republic. And the other thing that's really unique at Boys Republic is the students actually run the school. They have a council, and any discipline that's metered out is done by the students, and they make a lot of the decisions on the governance of the school, and it's really a way to teach the students responsibility. They also have a transitional center. Students obviously graduate when they're around 18, and then the school stays with them and helps them grow. The exciting thing about the Culinary Institute that we were just able to complete, and I welcome people to look at images of it on A4E website. Olivia Graff Doyle, our design principal, and I worked with them very closely, and basically they had started a bakery on the school site. You may be familiar that this is a school that builds the Della Robbia wreaths, the Christmas wreaths, and they're built by the students. And then that's something that they do for their fundraising element. But anyway, the bakery got to be very successful. They started going out to farmers markets, and now after we've constructed this new facility, they're actually sending these out throughout the year. They're baked goods, and again, it's something that's not only teaching the students responsibility and also giving them something that allows them to feel good about themselves, but also it's something that gives money back to the school and to the students. They're paid for the work that they do, and I don't know. It's just a wonderful facility, creating something that is really engaging and incredibly successful with the students that they work with.
I know we talked about this earlier in the show, Gaylaird. What is the sense and the feeling that you get, and throughout the years, I mean, if it's a general question, let me know, but of knowing that you are a contributing, if not instrumental part in the lives of children and their learning experience?
Well, we all have low moments in our daily life, or our lives in particular. And when I run into those situations, I just think about. One of the most recent schools that we did in the area where I live in Oxnard, Rio del Sol. Taking that idea with the bear paws, to a much different level. As you walk into the kindergarten, the theme in the Rio School District is the river. And so as the students come in this entry tunnel, it's really a tunnel, they enter through a barn door, and they're surrounded by fish swimming underwater and on the ground and on the ceiling. And it's really an incredible environment. And so, I think about some of these things that we've been able to do and create, and the hundreds and actually, thousands and maybe even hundreds of thousands of students that have experienced those environments through the years. And it's, there's nothing better than, after working on a project for 6 years, is going there the first time where students are engaged and on the campus and working with their teachers.
Excellent. Anything we would like to share, Gaylaird, that we may not have talked about or touched on your show today?
Oh gosh, I would say that I think the critical aspect of learning is that students, and going back to Boys Republic or myself, or anyone that is in a tough environment growing up, that maybe they have no parents, or they have one parent, or they've had some tough experiences with abuse or violence or whatever, or they're just a normal kid. They may have a warm, supporting environment. But I think that, the key thing is that people need to feel good about themselves, and they need to feel like they can, that there's something that they're good at. And I remember myself, when I was questioning, my worth, or, going through those rough teenage years where you're trying to understand what life's about, and you're getting called names by, people at school and whatever. A teacher reached out to me and in the 7th grade, and I decided I wanted to be an architect. And I think if we think about young people in that way, that I don't think there's any bad children. It's just that society has not been there to support them, and so if you can, reach out to a young person, whether it's your own grandkids or your own children, and support them and love them, and encourage them to find something that they're passionate about. It doesn't have to be architecture; it can be anything, but help them find something where they can make a contribution to the world and make it be a better place.
Gaylaird, it's been a real honor and pleasure having you on
Well, thanks,
our show today as a guest. Thank you very much for being here, really.
Thank you, Tom. It's been my pleasure. I appreciate what you do, and it's wonderful to have a place where people talk about architecture in a serious way and fun.
Thank you very much. And fun. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gaylaird. It means a lot. You've been listening to the Modern Architect Podcast. I'm Tom Dior. Our guest today has been Gaylaird Christopher, Fellow of the American Institute of Architects and founding principal at Architecture for Education. For more information, feel free to visit their website at architecture4e.com. Again, that's architecture4e.com. Join us again next time when we welcome another outstanding architect, engineer, influencer, or civic leader committed to positive and sustainable cities, communities, and lives. Thank you for listening. Today's episode is made possible by Swatchbox, the leading sample platform for architects and designers. Swatchbox brings thousands of product samples from the world's leading manufacturers into one platform. Browse materials for inspiration, create custom collections, then request your samples for free with automatic next day or second day shipping. Get started at swatchbox.com.